Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we will be talking about the 3 most common mistakes that people make when it comes to the real estate market, when it comes to properties, and help you guys to avoid these mistakes altogether. Alright, so moving on. The very first mistake that most people do, and by far the most common one, is you do not treat your property as an asset, right? So many of us, we kind of grew up approaching property or approaching real estates as just a place to stay and a place for us to live. Subsequently, we do not consider, or maybe some of us do not even think it is possible that real estate or properties can grow in value or can be treated as an asset. Now, for most of us, when it comes to property values, the two major ways that we actually lose value for our properties is either number one, through a capital depreciation, or number two, through snowballing accrued CPF accrued interest. So, it is not often the case that a property has to depreciate in value. In fact, I would say it is not the case at all, because most properties, if not all properties, actually go through a capital appreciation phase before a consolidation, and then subsequently a depreciation phase in the later years of its life. So my question to you guys here, to anybody who thinks that a property cannot be an asset or cannot grow in value, is actually this. If you are prepared to own a depreciating asset and you're prepared to live, let's say you buy a $500,000 very old property right now, and subsequently it's worth maybe $400,000, losing this $100,000, if you are prepared to live with it, why do you not just consider renting in the first place? If you're just renting a place right away from the start, then I mean, if you're going to lose the money anyway, at least you do not have so much capital outlay at the start. You do not need to come up with so much cash or so much CPF right from the start. The difference you make between this opportunity cost of having to have this initial capital outlay can actually be reinvested, even if we are putting it into something very small interest, very low interest at a fixed deposit 1% a year, you still make some money out of it, right? So that's the first most common mistake, where we do not treat our property as an asset. And believe me, through proper planning, your properties can definitely appreciate in value, can actually grow in value. Number two, which ties in quite closely to the most common mistake number one, is we do not have a plan, a clear plan, or we do not stick to our plan and we get greedy with our plan. So even if we know that properties can be a growth asset, we need to have a very clear strategy when it comes to approaching the properties that we are holding. We need to know how long we are holding it for, what's our exit price, what's our target prices, and be very, very clear to stick to it. So, properties and real estate, unlike stocks and like bonds, they are not subdivisible, right? If you own one property, that's it. When you need to sell, you have to sell your whole property. You can't say I'm selling 50% of my $1 million property, so you cash out partially and you try to hedge against future increases by holding 50%. You don't. But this is where discipline becomes a lot more important, because would you rather make the price target that you are aiming for, or would you rather try to be greedy to push higher and end up losing your entire profits altogether? Discipline is a very, very important factor when it comes to the real estate market in Singapore, when it comes to investing in the real estate market. And the downside for us not sticking to our plan is actually so much higher, since we could lose so much more, right? So the third most common mistake that people happen to make, or the most common mistake that we see, the third most common mistake that we actually see, is we are not adequately leveraging through a mortgage. The cost of borrowing in Singapore's market right now is very, very low. The estimated interest rate per annum we are seeing is about 1.2%, one of the lowest cost of borrowing we can see in the world, right? Right, so the third most common mistake that we very often see is we do not make use of leverage, or we invest too much cash. We buy a property entirely with cash, even if we can take a loan or take a mortgage. In today's climate, in Singapore's mortgage market right now, our interest rates are very, very low, at typically about 1.2 to 1.3%. So we are one of the lowest in the world, and this gives us a very unique opportunity where we're able to take up a huge mortgage or a huge loan and invest it, right? Typically to the age of 65 years old, which is the legal age of the latest, the longest loan tenure. But even though 65 is the last age we can service the loan to, many of us will very quickly realize that at about 50 years old, the cost of borrowing or your monthly repayment amount becomes so much higher. That's because you are squishing everything together within the last 15 years. If you take a loan at 50 and your repayment term is so short that you will quickly feel the impact of having all your repayments squished rather than stretch out over a long period of time. So 30 to 50 is what I would call the golden years of investing for a real estate. Is the period where we will be able to loan the longest amount, to loan the largest amount with the longest repayment term, and our monthly repayment will actually be so much lower. This is also why it is so important that we approach investing, or we approach the property that we choose with so much caution and so much attention, because one wrong move and if we lock ourselves into the wrong property that is not even an asset, over the next few years that is depreciating actively, every year is dropping in value, but yet we are stuck either in an MOP or an SSD period, then we quickly realize that this eats into our golden years. We just have a short 20 years that we can benefit from the low interest rates, the low cost of borrowing in Singapore, right? So with this wrong move, you easily set yourself, even if we say you need double the time to cover back, because you lose your money in the first cycle, you need the second cycle just to break even with whatever losses you've made in the first cycle. So this is why it's so important to have a plan and to understand the power of leveraging in Singapore's real estate market. These are the three most common problems, the three most common mistakes that I've seen people make in the real estate industry. I hope that this video has been helpful to help all of you to understand kind of like what are the most common pitfalls, and if you have a different idea or if you believe there's other mistakes that are much bigger than this, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll be looking through it. Hopefully we can have a very good spirited discussion. Alright, cheers.